Times with this rather stirring picture there. Residents' relief as Britain's deepest pothole is finally filled. The pothole in East London turned into a 5-foot deep sinkhole. Don't know how he got out of that. Sparking fears of a serious accident. Yes, it's a local resident there, Dean Hope, who got into that sinkhole, hoping it would put pressure on Newham Borough Council to fix it. We're going to talk to Mark Morrell, also known as Mr. Pothole, who calls himself the world's best-known pothole campaigner. He's been campaigning all over the country to fix potholes since 2013. Hello to you. How bad is the problem? Oh, just one moment, Mr. Pothole, because we cannot hear you. I'm just going to hold you there for a moment to see if we can get some sound. Let's try once more. How bad is the problem?
There's a massive problem. Their roads have been neglected for decades and there's a £14 billion backlog in road maintenance. Repairing potholes is a waste of money. Let's actually, government of any party that gets in the future, actually resurfaces our roads on an annual basis. Like other countries, we're going to go further down decline. We're 37th in the world for the standard of our roads for a G7 nation.
And how dangerous do you think it is?
Well, it's reported that one cyclist a week is killed or seriously injured as a result of potholes.
Killed?
And over 70 motorcyclists are killed or seriously injured as a result of badly maintained roads because the skid resistance on roads have worn off. There's a report showing that that needs addressing on at least a fifth of our country's roads.
Right. Well, politicians, both of you, all parties not taking it seriously, and it is a big issue for people. Tim?
It's a huge issue, and daily I get photographs of potholes in my constituency, and it's a real problem in rural areas and in urban areas. So the government put a £200 million fund in the budget. We need more. In my county in West Sussex, we've got £3 million of that. But what we also need to do is to clamp down, as from the beginning of this month there are new rules and regulations about utility companies digging up the roads, because it's often because they don't restore the roads properly that they then crumble much more easily. They are now going to be fined much more heavily for that, and they're going to be inspected on the standard of their work. But when councils go and repair the potholes, too often they're not done properly as well. So 6 months later, it's crumbled. So we've got to have more investment, but we've got to have better quality patching up of these potholes, and we've got to do it quicker. In my county, we have an app. You can put your GPR location on the app where this pothole is. It will go directly to report it, and they are usually dealt with within 14 days. So we need to use technology more like that. But some of them, there are parts of the country where they're just taking ages. There was a local stunt in Worthing the other day where one councillor presented a first birthday cake to a pothole which had been there for a year and hadn't been dealt with. It is a problem. I'm
going to come to you again in a minute, Mr. Morrell, but first of all, how would Labour fix the problem?
Well, part of this is about the way in which money has just been shredded out of local government to have the money to be able to repair potholes in the first place. And I look at the budgets of local government as a former local councillor and weep for my colleagues about the difficult choices they have to make. But I do also notice that it is Labour councils that are spending a lot more money fixing potholes and getting them fixed more quickly than Conservative councils. So it is also about the priorities. And actually, one of the things I think about is, well, it is true.
We'll come on to that. We'll come on to that in a moment.
We can trade statistics. I think it reflects what people really want us to be talking about in Parliament, which is the everyday challenges they're facing. Because actually, in a cost of living crisis, you go over a pothole and it does something to your car, you probably can't afford to fix it.
Right. Mr. Morrell, does that reassure you? Is that going to fix the problem, what you've heard?
No, same old rhetoric. Both parties arguing each other. In the year 2000, the carriageway maintenance backlog was £3.75 billion, when arguably there was more money available. A then Transport Minister wanted to actually put a 10-year plan to reduce that. That never happened. And now we're at over £14 billion. And as for local councils, I am their biggest critic, but many of them, and it doesn't matter what political persuasion are, have got immense pressures on them. Unless government fund an annual resurfacing programme, we can expect our roads to get worse and worse and worse. And we're on a managed decline, and it's actually costing the UK economy billions of pounds. Road users pay in tens of billions of pounds each year in all sorts of taxation associated with roads, from fuel duty, VAT, road fund licence, VAT on repairs. But very, very little gets spent on maintaining our roads. And government will say we're spending £5 billion over a 5-year period in our roads. Well, over the last 3 years since they've done that, the backlog's got worse by £4 billion. What you're doing isn't working. And there's a Transport Select Committee report called Fill in the Gap that's got all the answers. I worked with that with Lynn Greenwood when she was chair.
OK.
But government gave it lip service.
All right, well, let's go to our other guest just to talk about the claims and counterclaims. I mean, Mark Morrell has got all the detail there, and we'll come back to you in just a moment. The Daily Mail has this claim. Labour's woke spending, it says, could have sorted out 30,000 potholes. Council chiefs spent £1.5 million on equality, diversity and inclusion training over last year, according to new figures. But then in the Mirror, it says exclusive Labour council spend £4.24, which is what Stella was saying, more per person fixing potholes than Tory town halls. And we also have the Liberal Democrats who have said that some councils in England are taking over a month on average to fix potholes once they have been reported, although that's better than the year that Tim was talking about, with some individual potholes left for 567 days before being repaired. They want all cuts to roads funding to be fully reversed. This is something of a political bun fight, isn't it?
It is, and that figure, that 567 days one of my colleagues was writing that story on Sunday, and I've got potholes around the corner from me that it's not even really a pothole, it's just like
a crater.
It's like beyond that, it's just this big, the road's basically like falling away. So I'm one of those sad people with one of the apps, like Tim says, from my local council. I mean, usually when I'm walking the dog, it's reporting mattresses that have been abandoned, left overnight. I'm straight on it on the app reporting them. And I thought, well, I better get on with reporting the massive pothole around the corner from me. So maybe in 567 days, it might get fixed.
You haven't had a response then?
No, well, it says it's approved. It says it's been reported to Highways, but it's still there at the moment. Well, it's in the southeast of London. But
who runs it?
No.
But what I was going to say was, the parties are clearly like trading blows on this. They can all come up with different statistics, the different ways to kind of suit their and then come up with pothole fund and all of this. Clearly, there's a problem there that our roads haven't had enough investment in them. We know that local authorities don't have the funding they need to be able to provide all the services they do. And then, surprise, surprise, things like potholes don't get sorted. And we know why we're having this round now. It's 2 weeks before local elections. And once that's gone, this issue will go out of the headlines and we'll just move on.
Well, Mark Morrell's nodding away there. I'll come back to you in a minute. Is that you agree with that,
Yeah,
Salma?
no, completely. And I think it's the sort of cynicism of the fact that it's local election time, so we're all going to sort of start talking about potholes. But what I think is really interesting about what Mark said from a policy perspective and a national policy perspective is that this is a productivity question. This is a growth question. And if the government reframed it in a way that talked about roads as infrastructure in the same way that it does rail, then perhaps we wouldn't have these issues and there'd be a different pot of funding that could be available to it. But I do think that a lot of these stories in trading blows on these statistics is cynicism rather than actually wanting to deal with the issue.
I mean, Mark Morrell, would you be prepared to pay more taxes in order to fund either local authorities or to government, central government, to fix the problem?
Well, that's a debate of a lot of motorists think they pay enough already, and there's billions of pounds put into things like HS2 that I think is the biggest white elephant going, where our road network is vital. 95% of all of our travel is on our local roads. And we've got to stop this thing of repairing potholes because, quite right, you repair a pothole, you get a failure with it weeks next to it. It's not because the pothole failed, it's the area around it that's in poor condition. So unless you resurface your roads, places like Japan do a 25-year investment plan on their road network. Unless we accept that across parties and actually put in another £3 billion a year, every year, to get rid of the maintenance backlog, because it's not only carriageways, there's a £6 billion backlog in bridge maintenance. If you include footpaths, drainage and everything else, we're probably sitting with, in my estimate, about £30 billion backlog. And something's got to be done because with the cost of living crisis, those costs have just gone up by 20-25%, and the poor authorities trying to do something about it haven't got the funds to do it. And national highways that are not political have got the same issues.
Would you commit to that?
Well, I've got a degree of sympathy with what Mark says, certainly on HS2, but also on hypothecating the tax. And it's quite right. The amount that drivers pay through all the taxes, petrol, fuel and your tax disc and everything, is way more than actually gets spent on the roads. And it's also not a pothole problem. I did a big video on the litter problem on our Verges Long roads as well. The problem is, on prioritising, most roads are the responsibility of local authorities, apart from trunk roads, who are also spending money on education and schools and on social care for adults and children. So highways, roads, are always going to get bumped down the list of priorities. And that is the problem. We've got to take it more seriously. There has to be more money on a long-term plan to actually upgrade our roads, because we're not getting value for money, and it is dangerous.
Right. I mean, should there be priorities? Should things be cut? Other things be cut? And road repairs and pothole repairs be placed higher up?
I think this is why when, Rishi Sunak said they're doing the classic politician pointing at a pothole and saying, say goodbye to the potholes, he wasn't being serious because he wasn't showing he had a plan. I'd love to see Mr Morrell being our national pothole czar, because actually some of this is about...
there you go.
Some of this is about joining up how you're working together, isn't it? Some of it is about a contract not just to fix the pothole, but to make sure all the roads and the connective roads are working together. You can't blame local government. Local government has no money. This government has shredded local government budgets, and Tim and I would agree they're also trying to cover things like social services and social care with that. So you need to invest in it. It is seen as economic infrastructure, actually potholes and tackling potholes, but we're not saying how they all fit together.
All right.
Somebody like Mark maybe could knock a few heads in government together.
Mark, would you accept the job if it was in Stella's gift to give it to you, or offer it to you, I should say? Would you accept the job of pothole czar?
I don't know if I would, because having worked with the Transport Select Committee inquiry, I'm not going to waste my time talking. I want to get things done. There is an easy way of doing it.
Be the czar.
Thank you very much, Mark Morrell there, Mr Pothole. Just briefly before we move on, do you promise to talk about this after the local elections, or will it quietly be forgotten?
I have been talking about potholes, and constituents have been sending me photographs of potholes and photographs of machines that they have in America, these great big things that come along and gobble up potholes and resurface them, for months and months and months. This is not going away after local elections.
I don't have local elections and I'm still talking about it.
That's true. That's a good point, but you're still talking about it. Fair enough.